Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear listeners. Here we are again with another episode of Conversation. Today we'll be discussing Trump's withdrawal from 66 world international organizations. And to discuss that, we have with us again our dear guest, Abu Yusuf. How are you doing, Abu Yusuf?
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair. Very good.
So, you ready for the discussion?
Off the cuff, let's see inshallah how the discussion goes.
Okay. So, is Trump doing something odd? Is it a Trump factor, what is happening? These 66 organizations, I understand that 31 of them are UN organizations, so something they themselves built over a period of decades, utilized for their benefits, and another 35 are just other international organizations related to climate, economy, terrorism, I don't know what else. And when I think of what is happening, what comes to my mind is in pre-Islamic era, we hear from people like Umar bin al-Khattab, he himself tells about himself that when he was not a Muslim, he says that when we used to travel or be somewhere where there was no idol with us, we used to make an idol out of dates, so make them like a form in the shape of an idol and worship it. But later on, when we would be hungry and there was nothing to eat, we would eat up that idol. So when I see all of this happening, I think, okay, so America is now eating up the idol of freedom, the idol of international law, whatever they created themselves, and the time is up now. They are so hungry that they have to eat it up, otherwise they can't survive. Is this the way you see it, or do you think this is just a Trump factor?
No, I think you really presented a perfect analogy and an example to explain what is going on in the world today. And I think in part of the introduction, you talked about that the US, as part of the broader international scope, introduced these institutions and aspects within these institutions driven by benefit. I think the key core word is benefit, and international law serves and has served or does serve the benefit not of the international nations but of certain nations. And over time the question simply became, does it really still serve those benefits and interests anymore? And I think what we're seeing is not something that is new, but we're seeing is being expedited at a level and at a speed which has shocked everyone.
Why has that expedited? Is there a specific reason, or again is this just Trump's style that he does things fast and he's a deal maker?
So obviously this is an issue of area of analysis where people will present their own views, and no doubt political analysts have dived into this in a lot of detail to then say what are the driving underlying issues and motivations. From my perspective, you could argue there's an element of the Trump factor in the character of Trump as an individual being a businessman, but I think also this is probably the deep state looking at this opportunity to take advantage of Trump and who he is, to expedite and facilitate American interests and objectives at a speed which previous administrations could not do. And given the fact that the trajectory is really exponential, we talk about Venezuela, we talk about Greenland, we talk about even the old idea of Canada, which was risen once upon a time as well. These things have all been sitting there in terms of the interest, and also all of this is in context geopolitically with regards to not just a question of interests, but also with regards to how America wants to position itself, with regards to competing powers on the horizon, particularly with regards to China. So this is not new. The question is, and the violation of international law isn't new. It's always been occurring, but I think the manner it's taking place and the speed at which is what has shocked the world. But in effect, this shock is a very good investment for the world to realize international never really served people or nations. It only served the few, and those who it served used and abused it based upon the interests, which is what you described as your introduction.
Yeah, I agree. I made a podcast even on this topic that when you look at certain things which people are finding so odd, like the abduction of Maduro, you just go a few years back, 1989, Panama, they invaded the country and abducted their sitting president, Manuel Noriega. Similarly, you go further back, 1973, they invaded Chile, or they orchestrated a CIA-backed coup in Chile to remove the sitting elected president Allende Salvador and installed the infamous General Augusto Pinochet, who has a long list of crimes of torture and abductions and everything. So yes, it's not new, but maybe those things used to be decades apart and now they are happening days apart. And that's why it's very shocking for people. So what part of these things do you think will be reversed when another president, let's say a Democratic president, comes in America?
So I think the interesting conversation could be more about, can it be reversed? So there's two elements of reversal. One is a reversal of policy, And one is a reversal of what has been established as an opinion amongst the world with regards to how brazen and how much the US has violated fundamental principles which the so-called existing world order has been working upon.
And another thing is the reversal of the war booty which they collected while this policy existed.
Correct.
So three things then. So will the policy be reversed or not? Will they return the war booty? So for instance, will the oil which they have captured during Trump's time, will it be given back to Venezuela when another president comes? Or if they take over Greenland, will it be given back or not? And the third point is that you mentioned.
So what I'd say is that all of this again is a question of analysis. If you look in context of benefit, no, none of this will be reversed. The two that we talked about in terms of the reversal of policy, because the policy is deeply enshrined, and what Trump effused very clearly and categorically, this is all about American interests. American interests don't change. How you achieve them may change in terms of styles and means, but the fundamental objectives of interest don't change. So reversal of those, I don't perceive that. I think in terms of what they've taken to war booty, I don't believe that will change or reverse anytime soon. I think the key thing is not the fact that Trump has dismantled international law in the eyes of everyone in such a short period of time, albeit we all knew that international law was just a tool for the likes of the US and other key major powers in the world today. I think the question is simply, has the belief in international law been severed permanently in terms of public opinion, and can that be changed? I think that is where it is, and I think more than this, it's how Muslims, given the fact we have a very ideological vision and a view regarding how the world should be from an Islamic perspective, do we have the opportunity now to invest this complete confusion and disarray within the West, not just nations who are running around trying to find ways to protect and preserve their own interests in light of American aggression, but at the same time, how they give some sense of perspective to the validity of international, as it stands today, or the current world order with regards to war booty. And I think that is a question which I think is open for discussion. And my view is that what Trump has done is difficult to reverse in the short term in terms of people's perception and view to the damage that has been caused to international law.
What would you say to the liberals in the Muslim world? These liberals have been advocating all this facade and broken international law, showing it as the savior. So I often think of these people, some of their forefathers were actually the real descendants of Amr ibn Luhay. Amr ibn Luhay was the person who went to Syria from Hijaz, from this area, and he went to Sham, so currently Syria, and he was the first one to bring an idol from over there to this area. Thinking, because Sham at that time was under the Roman Empire and they had maybe good infrastructure, things, so he was impressed by that, and he thought, oh, this is maybe correlated with them bowing down to idols, let me take one with myself. So he had a good intention, like many liberals today have, looking at international law when it was working or when they thought it was working and it wasn't as clear as today. And then idol worshipping was something which got entrenched into the society over there. Now, what happened is, for Amr ibn Luhay, he wasn't lucky enough maybe to have seen them eating up that idol and exposing themselves. But today, isn't it that all the liberals should actually reconsider and their thoughts and views and reposition themselves accordingly, because the idol is gone now. It's not there anymore.
So what I'd say is that if you look at from the perspective of that analogy, so again a very, very good analogy, it's all about how people were able to construct a sense of a system and a sense of stability by which tribes, nations would operate. And even with all the shortcomings of the idol worship, for the example of the Quraysh, they were able to make it work for the sake of their interests. For them, longevity was very, very key in terms of this idol worship, because it was a source of how they also secured their interest either way. And it required a radical alternative to push out to the society, to challenge that worship. Because for me, when we look at the current world order, all we have seen year after year, decade after decade since its inception, is they've always tried to adjust it, to make it meaningful, to make it relevant for themselves, primarily for their interests, and in order to sell it to the people. Yeah. It's not as if the people didn't understand it's a system that is not ideal. And the standard statement is the best of what is worst available. Mm. So I think in that regard, liberals in this regard will be no different. They will still simply say the same thing. The system was working, albeit it wasn't a perfect system, it still works. So those who are sincere in belief in it will still try to find it as a source of comfort and say we just need to reverse what America has done. I think those who are, argument's sake, sincere and ideologically enough to then say we're eating something which really is worth nothing, we need to be looking for an alternative. And then the subject then becomes, how do they construct an alternative when the entire thinking process is constrained within the existing political, ideological framework of secular Western capitalism?
Talking of an alternative, it's coincidental that today is the 28th of Rajab while we are recording this. And 28th of Rajab is the day when the Khilafah was officially dismantled, destroyed, and the second, Abdul Majid II was kicked out, sent into exile, and Turkey became a liberal state under Mustafa Kemal. Do you think the time for Khilafah has come?
The time for Khilafah had come since the 24th of March 1924.
Okay.
Because it is an entity, a body from a Muslim point of view, from the Islamic point of view, should never have been lost. So in that regard, purely within an Islamic context, is something that we need, and something that we should have had, and something that we should never have lost. But in terms of context of today, no, absolutely. It is the need of the time. It has always been the need of the time, but if anything now, there's if we use the same notion, how we need to expedite it becomes greater. It's always been great, but in context of the political reality that exists, the opportunity to bring it and then draw it as a comparison to the way the world it is today is a phenomenal opportunity. I mean, inshallah, may Allah grant us the opportunity to realize it soon.
So America dismantling the world order and international law one by one, bit by bit, is this getting us even closer to Khilafah? Is this something positive from our perspective because now people can see it, or are things going to get even worse and tougher for people who call to establish Allah's deen?
So only Allah knows when the victory will be, because Allah is the one who will grant the victory. We look at the science, we look at the reality, and we work within the realities to re-establish Islam to the best of our capability. For sure, these events really are positive signs that can be invested to raise the understanding of the people with regards to these systems have failed. In every shape and form they have failed. Whatever you have been deluded to believe in over these past 50, 60 years, the truth is what you see in front of you, there's a better alternative. Okay. And I think, yes, absolutely, the time always becomes nearer in terms of the success. Will it result in more difficulty, more challenges? Will America become even more arrogant and egoistic and more threatening? If it does, again, this is a very good political investment in order to demonstrate to the world, well, there you go. This is the reality of what it is. And inshallah, when a future Khilafah comes, these events of today, of the past 2 years, or the past 10, 15 years, are a good comparison for Khilafah to say, we're doing this. You can't give us a moral education given what you have done over the past, not just the last 10, 15, 20 years, or during the Trump era. For the last 200, 300 years, look at the whole notion of colonialism, what it did in terms of devastation to the world. And so we can always bring that as a contrast. So yes, all these events are very good from a political perspective as an investment as and when the Khilafah does return.
So whatever they do, they're just exposing themselves further, and by that, at least they're doing us a favor.
100%, but I think also, subhanAllah, from a very practical perspective, I know people we talk in terms of there's Islam and then there is humanity. We always say we don't look at humanity in itself because our criterion foundation is Islam. But when you look at the world today, so many non-Muslims are questioning very fundamentals of the system, of what they believe, and of the governments that they chose and how these governments are hypocritical, supporting and complicit. For example, what's going on in the genocide for Gaza, the lack of support for other issues, and now they're seeing the world order being dismantled in front of their eyes, and they find these governments have no backbone, really no backbone, to counter it or provide an alternative. So yes, all of these are very good indications.
Jazakallah khair for enlightening us on this topic, and would be glad to have you again.
Jazakallah khair, off the cuff. Let's see inshallah how the views are with regards to it.
Okay. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.